join me in welcoming to the stage executive producer Mark Johnson, writer and executive producer Rolin Jones, our Louis, played by Jacob Anderson, Lestat, played by Sam Reid, Claudia, played by Bailey Bass, Daniel Malloy, played by Eric Bogosian, and production designer Mara LePere-Schloop. All right. Okay. Mark, let's start with you. Lord alive. All right. For those of us, people may not be familiar exactly with the story. Give us an overall premise for the series.
Oh, actually, you described it pretty well in your opening remarks. But like all good adventures, like all good love stories, this is pretty much impossible to describe. There's so much to it. But obviously, there's an interview, and there's an interview with Louis LePere-Schloop and Daniel Malloy, and he walks him through the history of how he became a vampire. And it is a story, it is so many things. It is a bold story, a love story between the vampire Lestat and Louis. It's about the seductive allure and zeitgeist of New Orleans, probably the most un-American of American cities. And it's about a pair of vampires falling into the kind of love that it dooms them and that can't sustain itself. And it's also about the impossibilities of a family trying to be created by three people whose own selfishnesses cannot keep the family together.
Okay, so obviously, Anne Rice there's 18 books in the series. What made you think, okay, this is something I want to tackle?
Well, it's the books. The books are so much fun, and they are so different. It's hard to believe sometimes that they're connected, and yet they are. Anne Rice's, her obsessions, her stylistic and thematic concerns are throughout all of these. And while one may be about vampires, and one may be about witches, and one may be about God knows what, they are all connected. And it's a great privilege to be involved in sort of, listen, you guys will tell us whether or not it's a franchise or not. We can start off and do what we do, and you'll let us know. But I believe that this world, the Anne Rice world, is going to go on for some time on AMC.
Nice. Rolin, as the creator, the writer, and the showrunner.
Oh, stupid name, showrunner.
I know. I know. I feel like next year that won't be used at all. But what is your version of Interview with the Vampire?
Well, our version, because these things are built in collaboration for a lot of things. Our version, it had a lot of things to consider. Anne wrote this book in 1976. It was published, and then took some time off, and then wrote all these other books. And we get the advantage of building this, having read all these books before she did. And we were building a universe. So we're trying to build a pilot that will make season 1 succeed, and you're trying to envision season 1 so that it will succeed for as many years as AMC wants to put this on. So some things to consider with that. But for the most part, we stayed aggressively reverential to this. I know everybody's said, oh, they moved the timeline, they've done all these things. Trust me, folks, the tentpoles are here. The plot, the story of this thing is, I would say, even more reverential than the movie is. Stick with us for 6 or 7 episodes and you'll see. Here it is. It is a story about the investigative journalist Daniel Malloy, who is at the nadir of his career, and a box shows up at his apartment that has no address, and he opens it up, and there are cassette tapes marked 1973 with a letter from the vampire Louis de Pontelac.
Louis de Pontelac.
asking if he would like to revisit an interview that did not go entirely well in San Francisco. And season 1 chronicles the life of Louis Dulac from the years 1910 to 1940.
Okay.
And his deep, toxic Fiona Apple album version of a relationship with the vampire Lestat and his child, daughter, sister,
sister, all the
Claudia.
things.
And the idea of memory is a big deal here, about what we remember, the story that we tell ourselves about ourselves, and it is I think probably the two most aggressive differences between the book and this are Malloy is much better at his job than he was in the first job. They're both older and wiser and come from it at a different point in their lives, and that some version, a primordial version of the Brat Prince, who is really where Anne Rice landed on, has been put back into this book.
Okay.
That's essentially what you're getting.
Okay, and I'm glad that you mentioned that there is. It's not a reframe. This is not a reimagining of this. This almost feels like a continuation, where they're going back and filling in the blanks that maybe got missed because of Daniel's past.
Yes.
And I love that, because there's something very of the moment that you're able to build into this show while also spending so much time in 1910.
We get a great advantage. The movie had 2 hours to sprint, and we're even in the first half of this book, we're getting almost 7 hours. And there's obviously a tremendous amount of beauty in this book, and then there are all this stuff that is in between. And again, one of the great privileges of being able to do this is we've taken so much of Anne's writing, and some of it is dialogue straight from the book, but some of it is this beautiful prose that she's written, and we have manufactured scenes where they come from a very, very centered place from them, and you're just going to be, it is just slathered with Anne's writing.
And what were you most excited about either recreating or kind of like redressing?
There's such extraordinary mourning in this book. There's such a deep sense of pain in this book, and getting to write a very, very old guy, an abnormally old guy looking back on this thing. I think that you have this sense that this book, for a certain segment of the world, was the book for them. And it's been really, really cool to slowly become one of those people. When Anne passed while we were doing it, you just kind of know that we're suddenly, whether the world wanted it or not, we're the people that are about to bring this out again. And you just feel the great weight, the great responsibility, and the enormous privilege of doing it. And it's really cool to build something for people who don't know these books really well, and then try to make something new for the people who know these books dead on. So there is a book, and there is a lovely movie, and there is this third thing that we are making. And AMC went all in. They spent a lot of money on a show that has some pretty transgressive things right in the front of it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
So I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
So when I first read that book, there was some stuff in it where I was like, I don't understand it, but it makes me feel good. You have taken the queer subtext and made it context. Yeah, it is. You aren't playing around. These two are lovers.
Yeah, it's what's really radical about that? I think nothing. It is an aggressive, beautiful love story. That's all you need to know.
Right. And it's also great to see that we can see queer couples who are horrible. These are a terrible couple. So let's talk about our leading vampires. Jacob, tell us how you came to this part in the series.
I did like a million auditions?
That was a lot.
How many did we reach? And Sam and I, we did a lot of chemistry reads over Zoom, which was a very interesting experience.
Oh, yeah.
We're on 2 different continents. And it really prepared you for like being a vampire, because I think I did my first screen test at 11 p.m., maybe midnight. So that's how I mean, this is a boring answer. I auditioned, but
I mean, he's skipping to the end. There were
Right.
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people before they're getting to this sexy moment. So, yeah.
How did you find, like, had you been told about this? Was this like something that you wanted part of?
yeah, so I watched the movie when I was a teenager. And then as soon as I got the email about this project, I had this weird feeling in my stomach that I was kind of like, before I even opened the PDF, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it was. Maybe I'm being all spiritual and weird and woo-woo about it. But I just had like a feeling in the pit of my stomach. And I read the first 2 books. And in reading Anne Rice's words, the prevailing feeling for me was like, I wish that somebody had handed me these books when I was 15. I feel like I would have felt much less lonely. I would have felt much more understood. And it kind of just completely washed over me. And I was so excited to be a part of this world and to tell this vampire story. I feel very, very deeply connected to Louis, sometimes in ways that aren't always easy for me to kind of articulate outwardly. But yeah.
And you're so good. Like,
Thank you.
so good. Like, because this is a tough role, because you have to nail somebody that we sympathize with, but then also kind of was like, well, you know, kind of a killer. Whereas Sam,
A vegetarian.
yeah. Well, Sam, you kind of had the opposite. Like, you got to make us love you. What has that been like, and how did you come to this role?
Well, I've always been a huge fan of the books my whole life. So when I heard that it was being made, I sort of really prayed that I would get the chance to do an audition for it. And auditioned and auditioned again and auditioned again and auditioned again. And then, yeah, we did, chemistry reads at like 1 o'clock in the morning in Australia. You'd get calls from Rolin, giving you notes at like 2 a.m. Don't go to bed yet. I can't do this. Oh my God, this is so intense. I can't believe this is happening. And then obviously I got it and felt this extraordinary weight of pressure to have this opportunity to portray this character who you have such a deep connection to and love for. And so got to return back to these books and just dive into them and study him. French lessons, piano lessons, dancing, singing, all of this extraordinary stuff that you like dream about as an actor that you get to do. And then of course Roland's dialogue is so beautiful. It's so eloquent. The lines that you get to say mixed with direct quotes from Anne Rice. It's a gift. It's the greatest gift that I've ever been given, really. And then of course, this guy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, that is.
So,
I am not going to sugarcoat. I mean, I defy any red-blooded heterosexual whatever to not watch this and be like, Lestat. I mean, if nobody tells them, anybody. And it is. I mean, these two are. They're still terrible together, but they're hot. And I was going to ask, like, how do you prep to play a vampire? But then really the bigger stuff is like, how do you prep to play these characters who are like so sophisticated and so well-versed in various art forms and knowledgeable and style and everything? Like, that's probably more than like, oh, how do you bite a neck?
Yeah, I mean, the killing is, it's a necessity. It's and it's beautiful, and Anne talks about it. It's it's something to be enjoyed and savored. It's obviously depending on which vampire you are, but yeah, the skills. They've been around for a very long time. They've lived such a long life, so they've been particularly a character like Lestat. He gets to absorb things, and Anne talks about he's a mimic. He watches things. He takes a bit of that on. I'll take a bit of that on. I'll learn this language. I'll learn to read just by osmosis. So I speak Italian now via osmosis.
There you go. It's that easy.
Yeah.
And speaking of living a long life, Bailey, you are a seasoned 19-year-old. This is just, I mean, so you weren't even born. I don't think you weren't born when the book was written, but you weren't even born when the movie came out.
No.
Oh, good God. So how did you research the role? And like, what did you, like, how do you approach this version of Claudia?
I was so excited. When I got the role, it's truly a dream role. And not like what Sam was saying, as an actor, being able to speak different languages on set, being able to do these incredible action sequences, but then also the dialogue. Rolin, your script, I mean, it's absolutely incredible. Your eyes are glued to the page. I read the book, of course. I had all my annotations and my notes. And then working on technique, I mean, Claudia is a big character. She feels so much being 14, and she's trapped in this 14-year-old body, Her mind will never be able to fully develop, which means that she is always going off emotions, and these emotions that she feels so deeply. And I'm really excited for women especially to see her, because I got to play 14, then 17, then 20, 25, all the way up to 30. And we really because it's a show, we got to really take our time and see who Claudia is at those stages.
And I was talking to somebody earlier about characters, female characters particularly, that get to not have to be great role models. Like that you get to play somebody who's bad and angry and feral.
Well, bad is a strong word. Because she doesn't think she's bad, She feels what she feels, and if she wants to eat, she's hungry, she will eat. And if she wants to say something, she will say something. And that's the awesome thing about Claudia. And I think that's why people connect with her so much.
And being bad is actually being good.
In vampires.
Yeah.
And now, Eric, the actual interview that is the framing mechanism, the interview between Daniel and Louis, it all hangs off of this. This is where we start with, and this is a little different than the original version of the book, obviously. What can you tell us about this? Like, how did you and Rolin kind of address and develop this version of Daniel?
Well, Rolin pretty much told me what I'm going to be doing via the script, and the script is very clear that it's 40-something years later, and Daniel is no longer the boy. He is who was a very ambitious novice.
You will always be the boy.
He was a novice journalist, just starting out making tapes of this vampire interview. And now he's getting a second crack at it, and he's actually been through his whole career. He's actually been very successful and actually is on the downside of his career, and this interview is maybe his last chance to really grab the brass ring. And it's dangerous. I mean, hanging out with vampires isn't the healthiest thing in the world, and he wants to go get that story, but he's a much craftier journalist than he was when he was a kid, and he's going to get the story, and he's not going to get lied to. He's not going to let Louis tell him a version of the story. He's going to get the story. And so, at any rate, it's very. When the day before I got the call to do this job, I was thinking, there's one last thing I want to do in this world, and that's play a vampire. And the next day I get this call for interview for the vampire, and I'm thinking, all right. But I guess I thought that it was just going to be a fairly perfunctory role where I'm just basically moving the story forward. And instead it's very complex, and it's totally interwoven with the plot, and it's just a terrific script, and I'm honored to be part of this crew and doing this thing and working with these guys. Just gorgeous stuff. Which brings us, speaking of gorgeous.
Before that, I just want to say, these three were all discoveries. When we started the writer's room, and on day 3, we all started putting up pictures of who we thought it was. That was the picture we put up on the wall. And when we got him, the email chains for the writer's room was just like, ecstatic. It was really an absolute dream to get.
And there's a specific portion, there's something about Daniel's life story that we also learn early on that is almost, it feels to me like it's the effect of him not telling this story from the first time.
There was an interview in San Francisco that changed two people's lives aggressively.
All right, and now, Tamara. So I was so excited when AMC said that Mara was going to be on this panel because the design of this show is luscious. Like, it is gorgeous. And we never get those people on these panels. So I just want to ask 1,000 things because New Orleans is literally, like, you know how people are always like, New York is a character in the show. Like, New Orleans is a character in the world. So how does one go about almost reining in New Orleans for something like this?
As a person that's obsessed with details, I just want everyone to know that Eric is not Mara LePere-Schloop. I'm just going to move that over. Drives me crazy. I read the novels when I was a young child, probably too young, and I think it wasn't until an interview actually about this show that I realized how deeply embedded the world building that Anne did in the books, it was ingrained in me, and I had a kind of crisis of understanding where I was like, oh my God, that's why I live in New Orleans now, is because I read these books when I was like 11 years old. And I think when I first heard about this show, I was like, oh my God, the pressure, whoever this designer is gonna be to get this right, because Anne's books are so rich with detail and so vivid in depicting an essence that exists only in New Orleans. You know, it's a very special place. And then when I read Rolin's scripts, which changed the time period and put us into Storyville, New Orleans, which is an era that has rarely been depicted in film and television, and also doesn't exist anymore. It's a neighborhood in New Orleans that was torn down in the 1940s, and it only existed between the late 1800s till 1917. It was this 20-year period where prostitution was legal in New Orleans. So it's this mecca of vice, and it was equally exciting and overwhelming to think of how we were going to achieve this and to present a backdrop for these incredible folks sitting to my left. And I think what was amazing is I've lived in New Orleans. I got my master's degree at Tulane University and met my husband, and so I've been there over 20 years. And I think for all of the crew that worked on this show, it's rare that we get to do a project that celebrates the city that we live in as much as this show did, and our crew was really celebrated by these folks, and it's a testament that I'm sitting here right now that they do really worship and appreciate all the folks that made this show. So I thank them all for letting me be here to be part of that.
I mean, Mara, she's incredible.
Yeah,
Mara's work cannot be overpraised. The physical world that she put us all in is why we believe this show succeeds.
Oh, wait till you see the coffin room. Oh my God, wait till you see the coffin.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of, like, you know, the coffins and the good juicy stuff, Mark and Rolin, what kind of Easter eggs have you been able to place into the show?
I mean, that's the whole point of the Easter egg.
Yeah, they're not Easter eggs if we tell you.
Where we're building a universe. Mm-hmm. So I'd say, and there's also a witch universe. It has we're all in the same city. I would say if you've read these three books, The Prince Lestat, The Vampire Armand, a little bit, and you know these books backward and forwards, every episode has something that has dribbled into this first book. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them.
Even some built into the episode titles, correct?
Well, again, with the first and foremost was to try to, I think the writer's room sort of had this theory, or just the saying, we were going to adapt this with a great reverence and wild abandon. But we were always coming back to the source, coming back to the source. So every episode is titled some bit of beautiful prose that is appropriate for the episode from Anne's writing. There's just there's a lot. I know a lot from when you just read these little things that come out in these driblets, and you think, man, they're coming with a pitchfork and torch to it, and they're just screwing this thing up. You have no idea. All it was us bowing to Anne every day. And
That's exactly what it feels like. It actually feels like a beautiful tribute to the world she created, which is now kind of on your shoulders because you're spearheading the Anne Rice universe for AMC. So how's that feel?
Daunting, but fucking cool too. You know, what an incredible gift. Another thing that I'm doing for AMC is this adaptation of Wuthering Heights, and this is this thing that is, elevated as great literature. And this thing, if that's literature, this thing is this thing needs to a new appreciation for where this is in the canon of American literature, and we're going to try to.
All right. And I can tease that in the first episode you will hear a name that is very familiar to other readers. So I will just say that. So for the vampires, how do you get physically into character for these? Because I was watching and I was like, I don't know if they're wearing contacts or if it's VFX or if they're possibly dead. So what are the pieces you have to put together?
Contacts?
Yeah, the contact lenses.
Acrylic nails, that's an intense thing to get used to for 6 months.
Yeah.
Fangs.
Fangs.
Coffins.
Oh, coffins, which I had the most comfortable one. Very proud to say that.
But I have the most beautiful one,
Fine.
which is very fitting for Louis.
And Sam, you said you wear contacts that go around the eye, right?
I've got multiple contact lenses, yeah. So depending on the mood, the dilation changes. And if I'm really angry, then I wear the full scariful, I think they're called, contact lens, which goes over the entire eyeball, which is a bizarre feeling.
Also,
Really?
the lenses change based on emotion. So if you're feeling very, very sad or hysterical, which Claudia has had those moments, I'm wearing the fully dilated lenses.
That's also the aroused one.
Other word for it.
We're going to do some audience questions if you have some. So I think the microphone is set up in the middle. That light just came up. There we go.
Oh, look, there's a bright light.
Oh, look at that.
You have to have courage if you.
So before we go to this, for Eric, Daniel, he goes back into the lion's den basically, and he has already had one battle with him. Does he ever? Is he afraid of him still?
Well, the definition of courage is being afraid and going after it anyway. He's afraid, of course he's afraid. He's scared, and he's trying to scare me, both as character and Jacob was also trying to scare me. Yeah, there's the fear, but there's the ambition too, and that's such a powerful force in him because he's so much older now. I mean, there's the whole thing of wait, I don't want to go. So then there's also the temptation. I mean, it's always sitting there. He says, I can make you one of us if you want, and that's always there as a temptation as well. So it's very complex. It's wonderful. It was wonderful playing it. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Marcy, and I'm a natural-born medium and a Native American Kickapoo Nation. My question is, how will you be incorporating the dark gift that Lestat holds into the show, or will you be?
We're incorporating it. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no gift. Obviously, I guess hopefully a lot of people have read the books who are here, and hopefully our show will encourage more people to read the books. But he has a lot of gifts, and as those who've read the books know where he's come from directly before he meets Louis, you know, he's got some serious power. But, you know, he wants to withhold that to make sure that Louis loves him for who he is first. You don't want to control somebody with your power. So it's a you know, in our show, it's a sort of a game. It's a dance that he's doing with his gifts.
And to piggyback on that, we really explore how complex each character is in the show because we have so many episodes, and I think it was really fun to be able to dive into the depth of each character.
I mean, I think the thing with the really challenging thing with Lestat is he is sitting on a great deal of power. And in order to make this relationship work, he has to constantly push that down because in our universe, he has already been with Nikki, and he has already been in whatever you want to say about his relationship with his mother. And he is coming into New Orleans looking for something new, trying one more time to find the right person. And it becomes a very challenging thing to how do you meet someone in the
At
middle.
a level,
Yeah.
you're so powerful. It's hard, yeah. It's challenging.
And he meets his match.
Go ahead.
Hi. Okay, so my question, since you're doing a different adaptation, in the books, Armand takes the reporter and, you know, keeps him for a while. But it doesn't look like he has that since this is an older version of the reporter in the storyline that you're going with. So how are you going to explain that?
Right, yeah. Well, luckily in season 1, we don't have to. But I will tell you this, that has been thought. We have considered that there is a grand design for all of this. And I think if that is an important relationship to you, don't worry.
All right. Ooh. Go ahead.
Hi. I'm very much looking forward to the series. One particular aspect for it is that one of the things that I felt that the original book and the movie didn't really expand upon too much is Claudia's character. And I'm wondering how much exploration in Claudia, not only in her character, but also like her past and what she truly becomes, how much of that is going to be put into the series?
That's a really awesome question. I love playing Claudia. I really, really do. It's an absolute dream role. And we do talk about her past. And when I was even doing research for the role, I was thinking about her past and what that meant to her. And we really, really talk about that. And then her relationship with Louis versus her relationship with Lestat, it really changes throughout each episode. And one of my favorite parts, because we did see all episodes, was that you never know who's really the villain, because we're all, like, again, we're all so complex. You're on the edge of your seat through each episode, and it's really fun to watch and was really fun to dive into.
I mean, look, the challenge is, right, arguably the greatest creation she has, like the singular character that, like, you've never heard anywhere in any literature, is this 5-year-old girl who, you know, has to live in this body and lives aggressively. There's a lot of sexuality in it, and it's obviously something we cannot do, and no one would be able to. There's a 5-year-old, and you don't want to be, you know, making material for those in this world, blah, blah, blah. And then there was, you know, this map that sort of Anne provided for us when she moved the character to roughly 11 with Kirsten Dunst. And she was so good in that, and she was so lovely, and nobody needed that. Like, there was no reason to try to repeat that. The writer's room said, let's lock it in at 14. And let's see, that's a very volatile time in a young girl's life growing up. And let's start there and let Bailey have this sort of aggressive third take. It's like the Spider-Man stuff, right? Here's Tobey Maguire, here's Andrew Garfield, it's a third thing. And just in terms of getting in deep, there is a very, very, I'll just say, aggressive entrance. And we do something different in the show when she comes. And I'll just leave it at that. But I think you'll be excited about what we do.
All right. Thank you. All right. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ariana, and I would like to ask, since I really love Enter You, the Vampire, the movie, what was your favorite moment when filming?
Answer that one.
Of the film or of filming?
The series?
Hi, Ariana. There was so much, honestly.
Yeah, every day. The thing about this show is every single day you were doing something that you'd never done before. we filmed only at night. We became vampires. We
lived at night for 6 months.
Yeah.
It's extreme.
Yeah, and as well, going back to the lenses, everything feels like a dream. Everything feels. It was really helpful for me because it felt like a memory. Treadmills.
Treadmills. Okay, so we walked on treadmills.
Yeah, we had to walk on treadmills, but when it was like a static treadmill, and we had to kind of look directly, I was gonna.
Yeah, go for it.
It's really hard to like walk in a straight line on a treadmill, so we're like.
And then the camera goes around in circles while we're walking, so it kind of looks like we're walking in slow motion. And every time the camera was behind us, we were laughing. Because you have to be like stoic and vampires. I love that there's so many slow motion vampire killer moments in this show.
And I have to say that these guys didn't participate. It's just me and Louis, but we had dinner together at one point in the show, and he's having a vampire dinner and I'm having a regular dinner. That was pretty intense.
Yeah. There's humor in this. There's some really
Quite a scene.
Intense, evil humor in this, morbid humor, which is really.
Yeah, there's some definite dark humor.
Yeah.
The fact that at one point humans are referred to as savory inferiors. So I was just informed that I have to close the questioning now because we have an exclusive clip from the first episode